Alright, so hey everyone, today I want to take a look at Fallout 76 and its dead zones. Unsurprisingly, the camera dead zone is exactly the same as it was in Skyrim Special Edition. So it's a 25% circular dead zone. 25% is a very common dead zone size, but it is large. So you can see, just how much stick movement you can make without anything occurring in-game. These blue regions represent restricted diagonal movement, so you can make bobbing motions like this, or point at very obvious angles like this, and the cursor will move perfectly left in this case. And once you pass this threshold, now it moves perfectly up, perfectly right, perfectly down. It tapers off slightly the further your stick moves, but there's still quite a bit of restricted diagonal movement even at the edge of stick movement. By having it set up this way and restricting more diagonal movement right around the dead zone, especially these regions, that makes all your precise adjustments only have access to 4 directions. So that makes those movements feel extremely clunky. And of course, that's still the case with more dramatic stick movement, but you do have more access to diagonal movement and more of it the further you point your stick out. But your smallest movements are hit hardest with that. The shaded region for the camera represents the acceleration threshold, so once you pass this, the turn rate will build up, and once you fall under this, it'll stop and go back. It's a little more obvious when capping the view like this, where you can see the horizontal movement snap back to normal once you fall under this threshold. This acceleration doesn't seem to scale with sensitivity. I'm playing at the lowest sensitivity right now to demonstrate this. Whereas if you play on maximum sensitivity or just higher sensitivities, the acceleration doesn't increase really at all. So it's less noticeable as you play on higher sensitivities. As far as the movement uses about a 27% circular dead zone. So you can see that being applied there. But there's no restricted diagonal movement being applied here. It's a little difficult to see with movement, but if I move especially around the dead zone, you can see that these subtle changes are being applied. And that is actually the case with full stick tilt movements as well. So there is full diagonal movement for movement. The shaded region for this represents the sprint threshold. So if you try to sprint when your stick isn't in these regions, you won't sprint. But if you're within the shaded region, you will sprint. And if you fall out of this region, you'll stop sprinting. This is actually an improvement over Skyrim Special Edition, where it would have a similar or a dedicated sprint threshold. However, if you're pointing in a specific direction, sprinting, while you're sprinting in that game, you'd move perfectly straight, whereas here you could be moving at a diagonal angle like this, and you'd still move at a diagonal angle when sprinting, so it's a little more intuitive. And overall, the movement dead zone in this game is exactly what you'd expect. A circular dead zone, full diagonal movement, with the sprint threshold both being based on how far you push the stick as well as what angle you push the stick. So that's perfectly fine being set up that way. The last dead zone I want to show is the map cursor. So this is about a 25% circular dead zone. And this too has a full diagonal movement. It's obvious when capping it to the edge like this. You can see that these subtle angles are being applied, and bobbing motions that I made with the right stick for the camera are being applied here. And vertically to demonstrate the same thing. The camera doesn't seem to have a speed gradient or turn like a sensitivity curve or acceleration curve. It seems like you can push the stick very slightly beyond the dead zone or push it fully, and there isn't really much of a sensitivity or cursor speed difference. It seems to mainly just use like start out slow with a bit of smoothing or something, and then build up. So really the only real issue with the dead zones here are for the camera, and that's why I'd like to request options to improve this. The first is dead zones for, it'd be nice to see dead zones for both movement and the camera. For the camera specifically, smaller dead zones make precise adjustments easier, as well as just make the controls feel more responsive in general. So as you can see again, you can make quite a bit of stick movement without anything occurring in-game, and when you're trying to make precise adjustments, lining up shots, tracking shots, this can feel, can hurt your accuracy. So having a slider to lower the dead zone would really help with that. On the other hand, increasing the dead zone is always useful for players with really loose sticks who might get unwanted drift if their stick leans dramatically outside of this dead zone. So having a slider ranging from say 0 to 30 or 40% should really cover every preference. The next thing is an option to get rid of these restricted diagonal ranges so that you could have full diagonal movement. This is actually all these options I'm requesting are accessible through the INI files. At least we're in Skyrim, and I'm sure Fallout 4 and probably this game on PC as well. But as a console demonstration, players don't have access to this, and for these restricted diagonal movements specifically, in Skyrim they were called like gamepad look apply snap to axis, and that was a simple toggle where if you toggled it from the default of 1 to 0, that would give you full diagonal movement. So that should either be the case here, or we should get a menu option if players want to, keep this or disable it at their own discretion instead of just simply disabling this. And then an option for the acceleration, either a toggle to completely disable this or have some level of customization for the intensity of it. Either way, it'd be nice to see an option for that. So that about covers it. Dead zone slider options, an option, or just simply disabling this, the restricted diagonal movement, and one for the acceleration. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and have a good rest of your day.